Tonight on Bridge City News, demonstrations turned violent as protesters clash with police in Beirut following the massive explosions earlier this week. Canada's Public Health Agency has issued guidelines for schools looking to reopen this fall. And we'll tell you the story behind a 12-year-old girl's generous donation to the Lethbridge Soup Kitchen.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition.
Good evening, I'm Loris Alexander. Thank you for joining us. Clashes between protesters and security forces erupted in Beirut, Lebanon earlier today in the wake of Tuesday's massive explosion that devastated the city. Security forces fired tear gases and clashed with stone-throwing demonstrators in Lebanon's capital amid mounting fury over the massive explosion that devastated much of the city and killed nearly 160 people. Protesters responded by pouring into the streets to call for political change.
So as my friend says here, it's been too much, it's been for years. This has been going on for years and they're not getting the message.
We don't want to change everything.
We are aiming for a change and we see it coming. We're going to keep on fighting. Even if it takes a lot, we will keep on fighting.
The Public Health Agency of Canada has issued guidelines on how to help slow the spread of COVID-19 and keep students and teachers safe as schools across the country look ahead to reopening. Chief Public Health Officer Dr. Teresa Tam says that since physical distancing is not always possible in the classroom, it's best to include other layers of protection in plans.
To support administrators of schools from kindergarten to grade 12 and local public health authorities in the safe resumption of in-school education programming during the COVID-19 pandemic, the Public Health Agency of Canada has developed guidance in collaboration with Canadian public health experts and stakeholders. The guidance recommends a layered approach consisting of multiple mitigation measures to reduce the risk of COVID-19 spread, including decreasing the number of interactions with others and increasing the safety of interactions. As well, to support local decision-making, the guidance outlines strategies for how schools can implement physical distancing in the classroom, maintain proper hand and respiratory hygiene, and maintain social bubbles. Given that physical distancing may not always be possible in school settings, it is important to layer multiple measures to reduce the risk of COVID-19 spread. And this includes providing alternatives to in-person learning, as well as adding additional layers of protection, such as the use of non-medical masks by staff and students. This guidance document should be used alongside guidance from provincial and territorial health authorities, ministries of education, and Indigenous community governance structures. School reopening plans developed in your area take into account local epidemiology. Public health and educational authorities will closely monitor the situation and adapt public health measures as needed. Remember that each parent or guardian is making back-to-school plans to best suit the unique needs of their family. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. I urge Canadians to support your community of parents, students, teachers, and administrators as schools work to reopen this academic year. Just as we have been at every step along the way, we're all in this next step together. By working together, not only can we help students of all ages thrive in what will certainly be an unconventional school year, but we will also be able to protect those members of our community most at risk of serious illness.
A 12-year-old girl, moved by her volunteer time at the Lethbridge Soup Kitchen, decided to donate her 4-H animal. BCN captured the moments leading up to the donation. 12-year-old Eva Ketchmark says a school field trip to the Lethbridge Soup Kitchen struck a chord with her.
I've always kind of been interested in helping people out, and when we came to the soup kitchen, I helped serve and I made soup and tarts and helped serve the food, and it was just, I felt like I really belonged here, and that it was really something that I wanted to carry on doing because it was such an amazing experience and it made me feel really, really good about myself.
When her 4-H show was canceled, Ketchmark decided to donate her steer nailer to the Lethbridge Soup Kitchen. That's meat that will last for 6 months or longer.
One of the things we often have to buy is meat. And meat is probably the most expensive thing that we serve. And we try to have meat most meals. We just think it's really important to serve nutritious meals. And one of the things that we have to buy is meat. And if you don't have to buy it, it's money we can use for other things. And so it's really significant.
Ketchmark's thoughtful and generous donation made an impression on board members, especially considering how young she is.
I guess that makes this donation even more significant. I have great faith in young people in our community. Sometimes they get a bad rap, which it's not deserved at all. But Eva speaks to the fact that yes, young people are out there. They're taking things seriously, such as helping the vulnerable in our community.
The biggest thing about all this is that we do our utmost to try to get young people involved. We encourage families to bring their kids as young as 4. We just think the whole idea of introducing kids to people that are not like them necessarily, people that don't have the same kinds of opportunities. And so it's something that obviously impacted Eva to the point where, as she puts it, she thought of us first, given her own experience.
A staggering 44% of adults suffer from at least one of 10 main chronic diseases in Canada. Recent studies say those who are impacted by these diseases are more likely to die from COVID-19. BCN's Ainsley O'Reilly breaks down the numbers for southern Alberta and which diseases are most prevalent.
According to the Government of Canada, the most common chronic disease is heart disease, and 25% of Canadians suffer from this condition.
A recent study published by the Heart and Stroke Foundation of Canada found that countries like Canada, with more accessible healthcare services and more people living with heart and stroke conditions, the higher the COVID-19 death rate than countries with fewer accessible healthcare services.
In fact, for every 1% increase in the size of a country's population with heart conditions or stroke, the death rate from COVID-19 was 19% higher.
According to Alberta Health Services, in 2018 alone, the South Zone saw more than 20% of men and women of all ages diagnosed with a heart condition. AHS declined to comment to BCN. For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
Bikes of all styles and models will be showcased at a show and shine in Lethbridge. As Micah Quinn explains, this event is a great way to get out and explore the world of bikes and support a good cause in our community.
Bring your motorcycles because the first ever Show and Shine is set to take place on August 15th.
We are just a group of motorcycle enthusiasts that wanted to give back to the community, and we've been raising money via like barbecues and such throughout the last few years. And we decided to do a show and shine, and it's tied in with my shop, Full Throttle Cycles. And so for the last year, we've been working hard as a group. There's a whole bunch of us just setting up and getting ready to get the whole community together to show off all their pride and joys and just enjoy the day and try to raise as much money as we can.
There will be a ton of custom bikes to check out.
Anywhere from airbrush bikes, custom painted bikes, to custom built bikes, to choppers, to vintage.
A select choice of the proceeds for the Show and Shine will go towards the Full Throttle Foundation, which supports Woods Homes in Lethbridge.
The foundation revolves around a whole bunch of people that have had troubles in their past as well, and everyone knows what it's like to struggle. And so we've really found a way to connect with Woods Homes, as a lot of us have had issues when we were teenagers. So this is kind of our way of giving back.
The Show and Shine will be able to accommodate 100 to 150 people due to COVID-19 guidelines. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
With talks between Democrats and the White House and vital COVID-19 rescue funds collapsing, U.S. President Donald Trump signaled Friday evening he would go it alone despite the considerable limits to that approach.
My administration continues to work in good faith to reach an agreement with Democrats in Congress that will extend unemployment benefits, provide protections against evictions. A terrible thing happens with evictions, not fair. It wasn't their fault that we were infected with this disease from China. And get relief to American families, yet tragically Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer continue to insist on radical left-wing policies that have nothing to do with the China virus, nothing to do with it at all. So you have a virus that comes in, and you have people in Congress that don't want to help our people. If Democrats continue to hold this critical relief hostage, I will act under my authority as president to get Americans the relief they need.
Recapping one of our top news stories, clashes between protesters and security forces erupted in Beirut, Lebanon earlier today in the wake of Tuesday's massive explosion that devastated the city. And a look at weekend weather. Mostly sunny this weekend with a west wind gusting 40 to 60. Tonight, clearing with a low of 8. For tomorrow, sunny and a high of 22. What are some of the keys to a successful marriage? Communication, a good sense of humor, making God the cornerstone of your relationship. Ron Price is a marriage coach and author of the book Play Nice in Your Sandbox and shares his insight with Jeanette Roche in just a moment.
Marriage is hard at the best of times, and now with the pressures of the COVID-19 pandemic, some might find it even more difficult. Today's guest is a marriage coach and a court-appointed mediator. Ron Price is also the author of Play Nice in Your Sandbox at Home: How to Enjoy Peaceful Relationships with the Important People in Your Life. Welcome, Ron. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Oh, Jeanette, the pleasure's mine. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Okay, so Ron, that's an interesting book title. What's the significance of this analogy?
Actually, Jeanette, it's the second book in the series, second of 3. In 2016, I came out with Play Nice in Your Sandbox at Work. And in all of my books, the play is an acronym, a 4-step model to prevent trivial, insignificant, meaningless things from blowing up on you and becoming a conflict. Can I assume you know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely. I think we all do. Yeah.
Not only were they not a hill to die on, they weren't a hill to get sick on, and yet they're taking over our time, our energy, our lives. So the play is, how do you prevent those from happening at work, at home? And again, in November, I'm coming out with At Church, which is a whole different matter. But how do you prevent conflict? The nice is, how do you resolve conflict? Significant differences that, Jeanette, we're all going to have with other people from time to time. How do you resolve those in a productive manner? So, in the sandbox, I just never grown up, I guess. People ask me, where did I grow up? I say, I'm trying to do it in Farmington, New Mexico. So it's just kind of playful and helping people realize conflict can be prevented at times. It can be resolved when necessary.
And like you said, I mean, whether it's at church or home or at work, we're all human, right? And so we have those interactions daily. And it's a challenge, right? Sometimes.
It's fun though, isn't it? It's fun.
Absolutely. Now, Ron, you're a court-appointed mediator. Can you share what your experience has been with couples who maybe put their kids first above, I guess, their spouse?
Yeah, they end up divorced. That's and I shouldn't be laughing. That's not funny, but it's incredible how many couples have told me, yeah, we put our kids first. We stop focusing on the marriage. Jeanette, if you really want to put your kids first, you get some very good, reliable sitters, or you get other couples with kids the age of your kids, and you trade off so that you're going out on regular dates. You're going out and focusing on the marriage because, number one, that's what your kids, they want to be able to come home after they've left and grown up. They want to bring their kids to your home to see both grandparents together. So if you want to put the kids first, you want to focus on the kids, you focus on the marriage.
Interesting. And I'm sure that sets a really good example too for the kids in the long run.
Oh, absolutely. Point.
Now, most people say that finances are the number one reason for divorce, but you say it's something else, that it's failure to cut the apron strings with your own parents. Please explain that.
We come into a marriage, Jeanette, with certain expectations based largely on how things were in our family of origin. That's all we know, so that's how we assume things should be in our new married home. Well, guess what? Your spouse didn't grow up in your home. At least, I hope not. That's a whole nother topic. They have a different set of expectations. And so one of the challenges in marriage is to carve out not yours or mine, but ours. And you've got to leave mom and dad. You can't be running back to them whenever there's a dust up or a disagreement or whatever. The smart in-laws, when they see you coming under those circumstances, are going to slam that door in your face and say, you go back and fix it, then come visit us. Marriage, you've got to become an us. It's just us. I don't want to say against the world because it's not a negative thing, but no, we're putting a hedge of protection. Nobody's going to tell us what to do. They can give advice if they want, that's fine, but we're making our decisions. We're not doing it our parents' way. We're doing it our way. And if you don't do that, boy, you're just setting yourself up for nonstop trouble.
Right, that's a good one. Now, the marriage flame tends to dwindle over time, unfortunately. What's your advice for a marriage that might have grown stale?
Okay. Actually, Jeanette, can I depress your audience for a moment? That flame that you're talking about, that gaga, euphoric, oh, that lasts 2 years or less.
Oh, wow.
2
That
years
is
or less.
depressing.
Biochemically, you cannot sustain that euphoric love. It's supposed to settle in to a more steady, stable, and long-lasting love. And so one of the problems that people fall into is they forget the importance of having fun in their relationship. You know, when they first meet, that's all they're doing. They're having fun. They're doing things, and they say, "Oh, let's do this forever," and they marry and they still have fun. But over time, and especially when the gaga wears off, life becomes raising the kids and paying the bills. Or is it paying the kids and raising the bills? Whichever. Fun gets pushed to the wayside, and that's a huge mistake. In fact, in my Play Nice model, the P stands for play, play, play. You've heard the expression, the family that prays together stays together. Okay.
Sure.
That for the theologians. I'm saying the family that plays together, has regular date nights, just as a couple, and fun nights as a family, is going to experience the joy longer, keep the flame, as you said, burning more brightly.
Right. And doesn't it seem that the common courtesies that we extend to strangers sometimes get missed in our own marriage? Where are some of these, and why do we neglect them at times?
You know, Jeanette, how much time do we have? Do we have about 3 hours?
No.
But the point is valid. We're at the grocery store and somebody puts groceries in our bag, we say thank you. And they typically say you're welcome. We say please to people, total strangers that we don't know, but we neglect that at home. I think we just kind of take people for granted to an extent. And when we ask for something, don't just ask, say please. When somebody does something for you, say thank you. When somebody thanks you, say you're welcome. This is not rocket science. This is not earth-shaking. But you know what? Those little things, Jeanette, they do add up over time and help people want to serve more, love more, encourage more. Yeah, remember your P's and T's. I've heard the expression "mind your P's and Q's." I don't know what that means. I don't know what the Q's are. Mind your P's and T's. Your pleases, your thank yous, your welcomes. You'll be glad you did.
Yeah, good advice. Now, in your book, you define marriage as two imperfect people who join together to try to form a perfect union. Can you explain this?
Well, that's what it is, but what's the chances of that, Jeanette? I don't know if you're a betting woman or not, but again, you take two imperfect, hurting individuals who have needs that they're not good at voicing at times. That's a whole nother matter. And they expect the other person to understand and meet those needs nonstop, you're dreaming. You're dreaming. It's not going to happen. Imperfect people cannot create perfect relationships. And especially, as you said in the beginning, under this COVID-19, when we're having more time together, we've got the added stress and the uncertainty and perhaps financial challenges. Yeah, imperfect people, you're going to see the flaws and the faults and the shortcomings in your mate. So if I may, Jeanette, could I cite the L chapter real quickly? I think it fits well here.
Sure.
The L chapter is look for the good. Again, you ask my wife to list Ron's top 10 faults, it might take her 10 seconds, maybe 1 second per fault. You ask her to write down Ron's top 10 good qualities, his positives. Well, depending on the mood, depending if we're in harmony together, it won't take her very long. If we're not in harmony, it might take her a while to think about the good. So force yourself. Look for the good. Look for the good, and your mate, your children, let them know, I really appreciate this about you. Thank you so much. You're going to start seeing more of it, I promise.
That's nice advice. Now, we all know the phrase forgive and forget, of course, but you say that that's unrealistic. Why is that?
Yeah. Jeanette, I don't know about Canada, and I'm looking for an opportunity to say the word oot, because I love the way you folks say oot. In Canada, when you were young, did you hear an expression, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Do you remember what age you found out that was a total lie? Words.
Pretty young.
Yeah. Words can be very hurtful. Well, another expression we've learned from way back is forgive and forget. Jeanette, we can't do it. Now, you're young enough, this won't be a challenge for you, but I ask people my age to think back to their first or second grade teacher. Let me put you on the spot. Can you recall the name of your first or second grade teacher?
Yeah, I can actually.
When's the last time you thought of that person?
It's been a little while.
But look how quickly you were able to access that information.
Yeah.
Our brains are such, God made our brains in such a way we don't forget anything. We may not be able to recall it when we want to. I promise you that one. But every memory, everything that's ever happened to us is in the emotional part of our brain, and something can trigger a memory to bring it right back to the surface with all the power and the pain and the impact. So to say forgive and forget, I might as well say forgive and eat this building. It's not going to happen. The trick, if you will, the challenge is forgive and move on. Purposely decide, you know what? Nope, I have forgiven that. And if I have thoughts come into my mind, I'm deleting them because I have chosen to forgive and move on.
It's an action, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a decision and an action. Yes, well put.
So most of us who are married are either trying or have tried to change our spouse, but you say that this is a waste of energy.
Well, Jeanette, I didn't ask you, but are you married, Jeanette?
I am, yes.
Ever tried to change your spouse?
I think everybody's guilty of it a little bit, right?
I was going to say, you don't have to answer that. I was watching the Today Show. This is probably last century, last millennium. It was a long time ago. And I was just about to shuttle off and go back to work, and they said in our next segment, an animal trainer is going to come on and explain how she used animal training techniques to change her husband. And I said, oh, this is going to be good.
Yep.
So I stayed and I watched it. And I can't remember her name. I would give credit if I could. But she said, when we train animals, we look for those behaviors that we like, those behaviors that we want to see more of, and we reward them. We give them food or compliments, praise, what have you. We let them know, yeah, that's good. We see more of it. She said, I started doing that with my husband. She said, when I saw him doing something that I appreciated, I let him know in no uncertain terms, wow, thank you. Man, I like that. Not over the top, come on, but but realistic. I appreciate that. And she said, you know what? And he began to change. But then Jeanette, she looked right in the camera and she said, oh, was it I who had changed?
Probably.
Jeanette, I did a dance in my office. It was her. She changed because when your mate knows you're trying to change them, the walls of defense are going to go right up. You know that. We all know that. So when you stop trying to change and you look for the good and let them know you appreciate it, they'll change on their own, which is far, far better than coercive change.
You mentioned an acronym HALT, H-A-L-T. Maybe tell us about that.
Okay. Yeah, it's universal that we are not always at our best. We like to think we are, but we're not. So if you're hungry, and trust me, you're not going to be in total control of your emotions, your thoughts, whatever, because your emphasis is on your appetite at the moment, your stomach. If you're angry, ooh, you're not at your best. You have left your thinking brain, you're in your emotional brain. You got to be careful. If you're feeling lonely or maybe your needs aren't being met, if you're tired, so hungry, angry, lonely, tired, that's a bad, I don't say a bad state to be in. We get there from time to time, but it's a horrible state in which to try to communicate with another human being, especially your spouse. Because if you're under that condition, you're tense, you're irritable, you'll take things the wrong way. That's when you need to know the secret of calling a timeout the correct way. Jeanette, did you know there's a right way to call a timeout and a wrong way to call a timeout?
I'm sure there is, but I don't know the secret ingredient there.
Well, may I share it with your audience?
Sure.
Thank you. I was hoping you'd say yes.
Of course.
We have a part of our brain that thinks right in the front, the frontal lobe. It's the command center of the brain, if you will. Our thoughts, reason, logic come from that part of the brain. We also have the limbic system, which is the emotional part of the brain. And what can happen to us as human beings, Jeanette, is we can get so upset about something, so agitated, so irritated, we will leave the thinking part of our brain, get smack dab in that emotional brain, and when that happens, all bets are off. So at that time, you have to call a timeout. You have to announce to the other person, you know, right now, I can't do it. I'm too upset. If we try to talk now, I'm going to say something or do something I don't say or do. Timeout. But Jeanette, here's the key. You've got to announce the time in. In other words, if I say to my wife, timeout, and I storm out, I've made it worse, not better, because I've left her wondering, well, is he coming back? Is he rejecting me? Is he rejecting marriage? She doesn't know. So I need to say one of two things. I need to say, I need a timeout, or I think we need a timeout. How about if we get back together in a half an hour, pick this up at 2:00, let's talk about this after dinner. So I'm letting her know I'm rejecting the argument. I'm not rejecting her.
That's right.
Or the marriage. And two real keys, by the way. I can say, I need a timeout, or I think I need a timeout. God forbid I ever tell my wife, I think you need a timeout. I think
that's not going to go over so well.
Yeah, no, that won't go over well.
Yeah, no, that is really fantastic advice. Probably something that we can all use, whether we're married or not.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Jeanette. If I may, when I wrote Play Nice in Your Sandbox at Work, people think, well, I don't work, so I don't need that. 100%. 100% of the skills that I teach in the At Work book are applicable. Probably 80% of the At Home book are applicable at work. And, you know, probably 50 or 60% of the At Church book, they're relationship skills. They're going to be applicable at home and at work. Because, like I think you said it earlier, relationships are relationships. We got to learn how to get along.
Exactly. Ron, thank you so very much for joining us today. We really enjoyed having you on our show.
Jeanette, I'm just sorry it's come to an end. I've enjoyed it immensely. Thank you so much.
Well, many people love the idea of having their own children someday and raising a family, but an unplanned pregnancy can potentially throw your world into a bit of a turmoil unless you get someone to come alongside to lend a helping hand. Today's guest is Monica Lowen, Executive Director of the Lethbridge Pregnancy Care Center. Welcome, Monica. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
All right. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your organization, what it's all about, what kinds of help you provide?
Absolutely. Lethbridge Pregnancy Care Center has been operating in downtown Lethbridge for 6.5 years, so since 2013. And we are there to provide assistance to women and men facing an unplanned pregnancy. Anyone facing an unplanned pregnancy, like you alluded to, that can cause a lot of turmoil. And it's a big decision to have to make. And so we're there to provide a listening ear, to provide encouragement, and to provide information on options available, and then support after the decision is made, whatever that decision is, whether that becomes practical supports or emotional support afterwards.
Right. So can you update us a bit on how your clinic is operating now that we have COVID-19 restrictions in place?
Absolutely. So for the last, 7 weeks now, our door has been locked. So we have just 2 paid staff in the office. Our volunteers are checking on their clients from home via text, via Zoom. We're still doing new client intakes over Zoom. The phone is starting to ring a lot more. Women are finding themselves unsure about a pregnancy and they're needing to talk. So we are being able to do that via Zoom and video conferencing. Women who need practical support, so diapers, formula, things like that, we're bagging that up and we're able to hang that on the door to ensure good social distancing there as well.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? We're all kind of doing it now, aren't we?
Absolutely.
All right, so I went through a crisis pregnancy myself, so I understand what it feels like, but maybe you can explain, what typically goes through the mind of someone who just found out that they might be pregnant? Is there panic and fear, obviously, fear of being left alone?
Absolutely, and I think actually the emotions would range as far as a spectrum, right? For everyone who finds themselves in that circumstance, it depends on their larger circumstances. For some women, they find themselves in that unplanned pregnancy and there's perhaps shock and surprise, but there's, okay, I can do this, I need a little bit of help. For others, there is absolute panic in that, what's gonna happen? Are my parents gonna kick me out? Is he gonna leave me? How can I do this? So really the range is enormous. And that's the piece where we get to come in and meet her where she's at, and just assure her that however she's feeling is normal and that's okay, and we're going to be here there for her.
Right, or him, because you mentioned that you do counseling for men as well. Mm-hmm. All right. So when an unplanned pregnancy occurs, there can be a stigma, obviously, that comes with that. So your clinic provides a non-judgmental approach. What does that look like exactly?
Absolutely. Many of the clients that we see often, they're judging themselves pretty harshly already, so they surely don't need anybody else. We're there to just answer their questions, and we're there as somebody who's not emotionally invested in her situation. Often when a woman finds herself unexpectedly pregnant, everyone else around her has the answers. So if she has spoken to people, there's people saying you should do this, you should do this, you should do this, or else she's really scared to tell anyone and she hasn't been able to speak about it. When we're not invested emotionally in her situation, we're not part of her day-to-day. So we're there to say, we're here for you. Whatever you choose, we're going to support you. We're not living her life. At the end of the day, we go home to our lives. She goes home to hers still pregnant. So we can't make that decision for her. We can't tell her what to do. And we surely can't judge her for what she chooses to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really important too, especially when you have individuals coming in looking for counseling, particularly maybe post-abortion counseling and support, which
absolutely.
You do as well, right?
We absolutely do. We are finding the longer that we're open that we meet more and more people, right? Everybody responds very differently after an abortion experience. And what we do find that our clients talk about is there's not a lot of space to talk about that. While the topic of abortion is far-flung across our country, there's a lot of attention given to it, and everyone has a really strong opinion, there's not a lot of space given to women to speak about their emotions after an abortion, whether that's relief, whether that is pain, whether that's confusion, whatever that is, often a woman will keep that to herself. but that is something that needs to be talked about. And so we're happy to do that and journey alongside her as she wrestles through those emotions and how that's impacted her life.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. Now, what age groups are you typically dealing with? Are the clients on the younger side, or do you get some more mature women coming in for help as well?
Unplanned pregnancy can happen to any woman who's able to conceive. So our youngest client has been 14, our oldest has been 43. Unplanned pregnancy really doesn't discriminate. So I would say our biggest demographic of clients would be between 19 and 24, the post-secondary age within there. But really, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, exactly, right? So I'm guessing that some of your clients decide to keep their child while others choose adoption. And is this something that you help with as well?
Absolutely. So when a woman comes in to talk about her pregnancy options, we'll give her information on all three of her options: parenting, placing for adoption, or terminating a pregnancy. And then whatever she chooses from there, we'll journey with her, whether that is the practical supports needed for parenting, connecting her with an adoption agency and walking that adoption journey with her, or being a safe place to land and to talk after an abortion decision.
That's huge. That is huge. Okay, so once the child is born, what kind of help is the mom usually in need of over the next number of months?
Again, it very much depends on circumstances. For some of our clients, it is very much a financial struggle. So then we're able to help out with baby clothes, with diapers, with formula. For others, they need emotional support. Perhaps they're doing well financially, but they're on their own. I've been a single mom. That is a hard, lonely journey. And so to have somebody to call and say, I'm so tired, or even have somebody to call and say, his first tooth came through, that's a big deal. And so we get to be that support as well.
And I see you even provide teaching for new moms as to what to expect in baby's first year. That's really important.
We do, and what we've found, so that's a 6-week class that we offer a few times a year. One of the biggest benefits comes out of that is community. And so we see the moms who do the class together, sharing phone numbers. They get together for play dates. They have built now a community of other moms, which has been fantastic to see.
Now, are these being done on Zoom these days, which you alluded to earlier?
We haven't done one quite yet, but we're getting into that time frame that it'll be just about time again. So we'll look at doing it on Zoom.
That'd be awesome. So what kind of feedback are you getting from people who come for your help?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's another great thing about having been open as long as we have been now. We've had women come back. I think one of the greatest compliments we get is when our clients return the clothes that they've gotten from us, saying, you've helped us, we want to help you. We had a client actually just last week call and say that she wanted to make a financial gift. She said, I have some money that I want to gift to a charity, and you guys have played such an important role in my life, and I want to be able to gift this to the center. So it is amazing to have our clients refer their friends and their family to say, you have played a huge role in my life. I want you to also help my friends.
That is huge. So you probably get some individuals coming to your clinic to get some birth control items. Is this something that you deal with as well?
It's not actually. We are not a medical clinic at all. So for those looking for birth control, we'll refer them to go back and talk to their doctor or to a pharmacist. We do have some great conversations though, even around the topic of abstinence. Just to be able to say, hey, it is actually a healthy choice. If you're choosing to be sexually active, then you do. You need to be talking to your doctor, but what would it look like in your life to make a choice for abstinence?
Now, I understand that your staff is mainly volunteers. Are you looking for any more volunteers at this time?
We're always looking for volunteers, actually. So yes, we have 4 paid staff currently and about 25 volunteers every week. And our volunteers are the ones who see our clients, who do those options counseling. We also have volunteers who work in our clothing room, sorting donations, all of those things. So yes, that's something we're always looking for.
So all across the gamut.
Yes. Yeah.
There's something for everyone.
Absolutely.
And are you still accepting donations of new or used items during this COVID-19 time? It's kind of hard to donate these days.
It really is, and actually we get a number of calls every day and we are not accepting any new or used clothing right now, but what we are accepting and we are asking for is donations of diapers, formula, wipes, things that are brand new and boxed up that we can wipe down and safely hand to our clients.
Okay, well that's interesting. Now, I believe that your facility is mostly funded by donations as a charitable organization. So how can people support you financially?
we are supported by our donor base, and we have a fantastic donor base here in Southern Alberta. I think we all know how philanthropic and how generous Lethbridge in Southern Alberta is, so we're so pleased to be a part of this community. But yes, COVID-19 has definitely messed with our fundraising this spring. We've had a couple of events that have been canceled, so any financial support that we can receive is very much appreciated. We are looking into some of the subsidies and things that are made available through the federal government, but we are getting ready to kick off an online fundraising campaign on Mother's Day. What we typically do is we have a baby bottle campaign where we hand out empty baby bottles to church congregations and they fill them with change. Well, we can't do that this year. So that is going to be entirely online. And so we're hoping that families are able to take part in that and that they'll be able to contribute financially, as well as just learn about the center and hopefully learn what we do, but also how then to respond in grace to someone who is experiencing an unplanned pregnancy, and just to have those conversations as families then.
So online financial donations, you're still accepting that through your website?
Absolutely, through our website. Go to lethbridgepregcenter.com.
Well, Monica, thank you so much for being here again. We just really appreciated you stopping by again.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be able to come back and give you an update and just to be able to share with your viewers what's going on in the center in the midst of COVID.
Canada is a country where Canadians, for the most part, are able to live out whichever faith they practice and feel safe doing so. But imagine living in a country where your faith could cost you everything, including your family, or in some cases, even your own life. Our guest today is Greg Musselman with the Voice of the Martyrs Canada. He joins me today from Edmonton. Greg, welcome back to our program. So good to have you.
Good to be here, and nice to be with you, Jeanette.
All right. Now, Greg, you've traveled all around the world with your ministry, and you've seen all kinds of things and have spoken with all kinds of people, including those who have been persecuted for living out their faith. Now, if we turn our attention to Nigeria for just a moment, the numbers are staggering, aren't they? More than 600 people have been killed this year alone in Nigeria for practicing Christianity.
Yeah, it's a tragic situation, and I've just been interviewing a fellow from Nigeria, one of the leaders there. Yunusa is his name, and he's with a ministry called Christian Solidarity Worldwide Nigeria, and we partner with the Voice of the Martyrs with him. And hearing what's going on currently. I mean, with the Voice of the Martyrs, we have our what's called Persecution and Prayer Alert that comes out every week. And there's always something about Nigeria. We found that it's unbelievable, really. When you hear like large statistics, more than 30,000 killed since 2009, 620 or more that we know of anyway, have been killed already this year. When you start to look at it from the individual families, so a man named Jonathan Yakubu, his wife, and 3 young children were all killed. And then they had a massive funeral. They dig this big hole, and you see all these people, our brothers and sisters in Christ, and it breaks your heart. And, as you mentioned, I've traveled all over the world, but Nigeria is probably the country, when I go there, when I document the stories of persecution and I come back, it's the one that usually hits me the hardest, because talking to people that have had limbs, taken off, there's scars, there's family members have been killed. We're trying to help them, the widows especially, and with the orphans, but it's a situation that is so brutal, and it doesn't look like it's going to get any better. And, so as I was talking to Yunusa, I said, well, if there's no hope that the government's going to, get in here and at least prevent some of this from happening, what's the hope? And his hope is in Jesus, that this side of eternity, things are pretty terrible, but there's something to look forward to. That's when we die. And that's really has to be presented before the people of Nigeria to make sure that they have their hope in Christ.
What a tragic situation they are facing over there. So, that just begs the question then, is Christianity growing or shrinking in numbers there with this persecution, or is it too early to tell right now with all of that?
Yeah. Well, I think, in general, Africa has seen quite an explosion in Christianity. And we take a country like Nigeria, it's the most populous African nation, and the southern part of the country, for the most part, is predominantly Christian. The northern part of Nigeria is predominantly Muslim. And then you've got in the center part called Plateau State, a city called Jos, and many missionaries that came from Canada, America, and other places, that's where they were. It was kind of the launching point to bring Christ into the northern part of Nigeria. But what has happened is the militant Islamists have determined in their mind they are going to turn Nigeria into an Islamic state and under strict Sharia law. And so with that, the Christians that are there, and there's significant numbers of Christians that are in northern Nigeria as well. There's churches there and there's communities like this particular one that I was talking about earlier, Gonan Rogo. It is a place that is a Baptist village, and there's a big Baptist church, and all the people that were recently killed were from that church. So there are areas and pockets where there are Christians. But these Islamists, like the Boko Haram, who are listed as the second most terrorist group in the world, and then the Fulani herdsmen, they're number 4. So you got both these groups working in northern Nigeria. So there's a lot of persecution. Yet, to answer your question, is Christianity growing in Nigeria? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're saying how dangerous the north was. So there's pockets of the south that are a little bit more safe than in Nigeria?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, we don't hear a lot of persecution, say in Lagos and some of the larger cities. I mean, there's still things that are going on, and that can be more of a cultural situation. Let's say a family is Muslim, they're living in the south, and family members become Christians. They could be killed, but they're more like being ostracized or losing their jobs, that kind of thing. But definitely there are, people that are coming into relationship with Jesus in the south. But because, again, there's not the persecution. And unfortunately, in the southern part of Nigeria, there's some pretty interesting theologies like the prosperity gospel, that kind of thing that, they're trying to follow the American way. And there's some things about the church that are a little bit odd. I found one of the things that was really interesting in like Plateau State in the center part, that's where we were. And then we were going into the north and doing interviews. And I remember one particular day I had interviewed a number of people. One guy told me the story of how his father and a number of the men in his church were driven by the Islamists into the building, and they killed them all. And he got cut and shot, and he had to pretend he was dead. Bukhar Samson is his name, and eventually became the pastor of that church. But I was, he was telling me the story, and I videoed it. In fact, I wrote about him in my book, and I seen the scars, and then talked to others that had been just through this brutality, and we've met dozens of children and orphans as a result of the persecution, especially in the north, that have come to the south. And then I was in this hotel, and I heard the music, and it was worship. And I go, I love African worship. And I'm in there, and then they put on the message, which was on video, and it was a prosperity message about getting a better car and a better life. And I'm going, man, and just down the road, people are dying for Jesus. So they have the same issues and the same challenges, Jeanette, as we do. But yet in the middle of all that, God is working, and some say in spite of persecution, but I think a lot of the time people have to make a decision. Either you're in the kingdom fully, both feet in, or you're not so sure. And of course, God loves us no matter where we're at, but it does cause people to really, consider the cost, which we're all supposed to do when we follow Jesus.
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating. And of course, speaking of dangerous countries to practice your faith, North Korea and Iran are certainly up there as far as most dangerous places to practice Christianity, right? So how is the underground church doing in North Korea?
Well, that's always a very interesting question, because for many years, our friends at Open Doors and other ministry that works with persecuted Christians have the World Watch List. And North Korea, year after year after year, more than a decade, have been on the top of that list. Now, Afghanistan is close to that. But in North Korea, because you've got what's called the Juche system, where it's kind of the worship of the Kim family, and it's basically a ripoff of the Bible. And Christianity, of course, exposes the falseness of Juche. So if you're caught with a Bible, you can be put in a concentration camp. You could be killed. And not only you, but your family members. They're so paranoid of Christianity. I mean, interestingly enough, 100 years ago, North Korea was actually stronger than South Korea. Then the war came along, and then there was the split. South Korea now has 4 of the 5 largest churches in the world. And then just across that border, just the demilitarized zone there in between North and South, is you can be killed for having a Bible or for meeting. But the interesting thing is that the church still is growing. It's growing at a faster rate percentage-wise than here in North America. Now, they can't meet publicly. They have their show churches there in Pyongyang, but it's controlled. They can't openly meet. And so they're meeting in their homes, and they have to be very careful even to tell their children if they're Christians, because if their children say something at school, the children come home and mom and dad are gone. They are put in a concentration camp, never to be seen again, or they could even be executed. I mean, that's how serious it is. And yet they're meeting in their homes. And what's kind of been an interesting thing is I was talking to Eric Foley, and we work with him. He's with Voice of the Martyrs Korea in Seoul, and I've had opportunity to be there and to meet North Korean Christians who are absolutely amazing people. But I asked him, well, how is the COVID-19 and the shutdown, affecting the North Korean Christians? And he said, well, it's actually, for them, it's been a positive, because they have to work long days, have very little time at home to study the Bible, and they have to, again, doing this in secret. But because of the shutdown, they've been put into their homes, and the government officials don't want to go near them. And so they've been able to take time of studying the Bible in worship. And then with Voice of the Martyrs Korea out of Seoul, we broadcast into their, the Bible and, commentaries and encouraging the believers there. And so for them, this time has been actually in some ways positive. Now, when people say, well, how many Christians are in North Korea? And, it's really hard to know the numbers on these things, because what happens is so many of them have been executed, have been imprisoned, but it's still growing. So maybe 100,000 of Christians there, and maybe 30,000 of those would be in concentration camps. But people are coming to know the Lord. And again, getting numbers in such a closed society is very difficult. But I can tell you, the ones that are there are very determined. And when I was talking with Eric the other day, I said, well, how can we pray for Christians in North Korea? What should I tell my Canadian believing friends? And he said, it's interesting that he had asked that question of a North Korean leader many years ago. And this North Korean leader said to him, "What, pray for us? We pray for you."
Now, Greg, you'd mentioned the pandemic. So now you also had mentioned to me earlier that you were supposed to travel to Turkey to speak with some Iranian Christians before this whole pandemic arose, right, for COVID-19. So maybe talk really quickly in the amount of time we have left about what you were going to do there.
Yeah, we were going to go to Turkey, the southern part, and I was actually going to be doing a trip to Israel with 100 Huntley Street. And that trip got shut down because we had to quarantine for 14 days, and the trip was 10 days. So I'm not a mathematician, but those numbers didn't add up. And then because I was in the neighborhood, I was going to travel with one of our partners that we work with. He's an Iranian, lives in Canada, and to bring aid to Christian refugees from Iran, and they were getting into Turkey. Now, I have been there in the past in Turkey and have met with Iranian Christians who have left the country because of the unemployment and the problems and the oppression and the rest of it. And so they have, got into Turkey. So we were going to go there and bring them food and aid and, and get their stories and find other ways in which we can help them. I know in one case, a family there, two of their children both have severe medical issues. And so Voice of the Martyrs Canada has been helping them. And, just to talk to them, to find out what's going on and how we can help them. Of course, everything got shut down. And, of course, we're concerned because the people that we're responsible for, that we feel responsibility for, trying to get the funds there. But I found, Jeanette, is that the Canadian people that support Voice of the Martyrs have not held back their giving. In fact, they're really wanting us to help persecuted Christians, because whether it's, in Turkey or in other places, especially Pakistan, India, Christian refugees from Syria that are in Lebanon, we're hearing so many cases that the Christians are not getting the food and the supplies that other people are, because they are not, say, Muslim, they're not Hindu, whatever the majority religion is. And so they're paying a huge price. And we've heard of Christians that in Pakistan, as an example, that are starving to death and are dying because they can't get food. If they would renounce Jesus, they can have food. But many of them would say, I'd rather die than deny Jesus. I mean, and of course others would, maybe they would say, well, I need food. I need to feed my kids. I'll just say I'm a Muslim, but in my heart I'm for Jesus. So, I mean, God is a God of mercy, but these are, there's some difficult situations. In fact, we're going to have a conference call this week with a number of other leaders, well, actually next week, from around the world, that how the COVID-19 is affecting persecuted Christians, and ways that as international groups that work with persecuted Christians to help them get food.
Makes you realize how much we really take our freedoms for granted over here when you look at what the rest of the world is going through, what many people are going through. Greg, thank you so much for joining me today. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to be on the show, and it was nice talking to you today, Jeanette.
Yes, you as well. That was Greg Musselman, spokesperson with the Voice of the Martyrs Canada. On behalf of all of us here at BCN, thanks for watching.